Howdy folks, the purpose of this video is to give an introduction into Saturn and Moloch symbolism, the point of it, and who or what is behind it. Saturn was known in Roman mythology as the god of agriculture and god of the harvest. He was often depicted as carrying a sickle in his hand, which was later turned into the scythe. Saturn was the main god worshipped by the peoples of Rome. In fact, the city of Rome was originally known as Saturnia, or the city of Saturn, and the Roman Catholic Church retains a lot of the Saturn worship in its ritual. Saturn has been known by many names, for most religions are based on retellings of previous stories. A few of Saturn's earlier names are Kronos by the Greeks, Shani in the Hindu religion, and Ninib in Babylon, who is also called god of war and god of the harvest.
What are you? Oh, I have so many names. See, call me Dad.
Saturn was also known as Father Time as he rules over time and death. In astrology, he is associated with principles of limitation, restrictions, boundaries, and practicality. Saturn governs ambitions, career, authority, and hierarchy in conforming social structures. In Roman mythology, it was prophesied that one day Saturn would lose power when one of his children would depose him. To prevent this from happening, each time Ops, his sister and wife, delivered a child, Saturn would immediately devour it. In other words, Saturn eats babies. This shows a connection between Saturn and Moloch, the god of sacrifice, and known as Father of all the gods. While Saturn is not Moloch, Saturn is a creation of Moloch, for Moloch is the being of Ormethian, or the god of service to self-beings. These are the people who worship the physical universe. Moloch is where what we would call evil originates from.
Mom! Dad! It's evil! Don't touch it!
Similar to Saturn, Moloch goes by many names, some including El, Baal, Baal, Dagon, and Asura. The force of Moloch is extremely wise and cunning, which is why it is symbolized as the wise owl and the knowledgeable bull. The owl you will recognize if you are familiar with the Bohemian Grove, and the bull symbolism goes way back, depicting the god as a bull or half bull, half man. From these symbols you will see where they got the idea of the devil from. You probably have recognized the hand sign for the bull because those in the elite understand exactly what it represents and flash the hand sign on occasion. This goes to show that behind the leaders of the world pretending to war with each other, there's a lot more going on that you don't see or read about. Moloch is the god of sacrifice, and sacrifice by way of fire is one method of worship. People have sacrificed animals and people, even children and babies, to this entity. In fact, the concept of the burning bush from the book of Exodus in the Old Testament is a direct reference to Moloch. Moloch is known as the consumer and represents the material world. Isn't it funny that those who buy into material obsession are also known as consumers? This is not a coincidence. One of the most powerful symbols of Moloch is the obelisk, also known as the phallus of the gods or the phallus of the bull, since it represents a bull's penis. Obelisks are a symbol that are everywhere, going back from today in modern America all the way back to Egypt and most likely before. When you begin to understand language and how words are put together, you find out that Moloch symbolism is very apparent in language as well. Anyways, back to Saturn. By following the symbolism, we find out that Saturn is the ruler of this planet, and we, the human race, are the harvest. Having a look at the symbol for Saturn the god, we see the sickle or the scythe and the cross. Taking these two signs apart, we have the sickle representing the harvest, and here we have the cross. The reason the cross is so important to Christianity is not because in the Bible the sun god was nailed to it. The cross represents Saturn and has been since the beginning. They just needed a reason to flash it everywhere.
A lot of Christians wear crosses around their necks. Do you think when Jesus comes back, he ever wants to see a fucking cross? Kind of like going up to Jackie Onassis with a little sniper rifle pendant, you know. Hey, Jackie, just thinking of John. We loved him.
Understanding this symbolism, we can see where so many of the symbols we see day to day originate. From the Knights Templar to the Red Cross to many different company logos and industries. One of the most basic and easiest possible symbols to make just happens to represent Saturn. This is by design. Another symbol for Saturn is the cube, oftentimes a black cube, for the color of Saturn is black. One of the most important symbols of the cube is Mecca, where the Muslims make their Hajj, for their god is the same god Saturn as it is with all the other mainstream religions. So what's so special about this symbol of the cube? One thing the cube represents is this third-dimensional world we're in, length, width, and height. It represents the 3D box we're living in, and Saturn is that box. And here we have the sigil of Saturn, the planet. Many practicing Satanists believe that wearing the sigil of Saturn utilizes and attracts Saturn's planetary vibrations to the wearer. Another symbol we can get from this is the logo of Freemasonry. This is just one example of how two seemingly different groups can be based on the same information and understandings. Getting back to the symbols of the sickle and the scythe, both of these symbols represent the harvest, but in addition they both represent an elliptical or orbital pattern attributing to the rings of Saturn. The ringed planet symbolism is everywhere. You can't hardly browse the internet, watch the TV, or even drive down the street without seeing these symbols flashing in front of you. Have a look for yourself and you will see that many of these symbols are very similar to each other, and most are depicting exactly the same thing in different ways or different angles.
Try explaining the six-sided vortex at the North Pole.
Saturn has a hexagon. It's some kind of a wave, but it's a permanent wave. It's been there since Voyager discovered it back in 1980.
So located on the North Pole of the planet is a hexagon. This could be the reason why so many companies use a hexagon for their logo. In addition, the hexagon is a 2D representation of a 3D cube, and can also be the reason for the importance of the Star of David. But wait, there's more!
The South Pole has something that looks very much like a hurricane eye, except the clouds are 5 times the height of the eye wall around a terrestrial hurricane.
So it's kind of a window into the depths of Saturn, showing us just how dynamic the planet really is.
Aha, so there's the Eye of Saturn. I'm sure most of you know how much all-seeing eye symbolism there is. We're told that the all-seeing eye goes back to Horus in Egypt, but I think it's quite possible that it's just another reference to Saturn. Okay, with all this Saturn symbolism brings up a very important question. What is the point of all this? So by following the symbolism, we can see that God of the mainstream religions, be it Saturn, Jehovah, Yahweh, Satan, Kronos, Ninib, Shani, and then Moloch, El, Baal, Dagon, and Asura, it doesn't matter what name is given to them. They all represent the same two forces, Saturn and Moloch. But this has to have been done for a reason. Energy flows where focus goes. With the understanding that we humans are energy input-outputters, we can see that the point of worship is to give one's energy away to whatever is being focused on. If you can picture how many people are worshiping their God every single day, be it through religion or through material goods and desires, then you'll see that this is a lot of energy indeed. If all these gods represent Saturn, and Saturn the god represents the planet itself, then all of this energy would be going to Saturn. What is so important about Saturn, and what does it have to do with us? And why does it require all this energy?
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window, or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Perhaps Saturn is that matrix, that machine or device creating and manipulating our multiple reality time loop we're living in that seems to be so real.
I wrote out these dreams in novel after novel, story after story. To name two in which this prior ugly present obtained most clearly, I cite The Man in the High Castle and my 1974 novel about the U.S. as a police state called Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. I'm going to be very candid with you. I wrote both novels based on fragmentary residual memories of such a horrid slave state world. People claim to remember past lives. I claim to remember a different, very different present life. I know of no one who has ever made this claim before, but I rather suspect that my experience is not unique. What perhaps is unique is the fact that I'm willing to talk about it. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed, and some alteration in our reality occurs, we would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
What kind of a machine could do these things?
A machine with the ability to turn energy into matter, guided by thought waves. It would have a very complex memory bank, be extremely sophisticated.
Like a computer, only much more. Could the machine that maintains the environment in this immediate area be kept in this house?
I think not. A device capable of keeping out this planet's natural atmosphere would be immense.
Good, I agree.
If this is true that Saturn is a machine, it also makes sense that it would need some type of energy source. Perhaps all of these people who think they're worshipping some god who loves them are instead feeding their own mind prison and keeping themselves trapped in it. So they are unknowingly giving their energy to the machine and its caretakers, who are usually referred to as them. So who is them? If you go deep enough into any field of the conspiracy, one thing that turns up in every one is that there is a hidden hand controlling and manipulating every aspect on this planet. These are the fourth dimensional beings who live outside of our time-space realm and outside of our view of visible light. These are the beings who have considered themselves the gods of the human race and have written many religious texts with exactly that in mind. I think of them as the caretakers of Saturn because it seems to be that their job is to keep us, the human race, trapped inside its box. I've touched on Saturn and Moloch previously and plan to cover it here and there in the future. If you are new to these subjects, you will likely find out how overwhelming the information can get, so I will provide links to a couple channels that center around Saturn and Moloch and dig much deeper into these topics.